Hello, everyone. Cool. So I just got off of a plane like 25 minutes ago, and it was one of those planes where you had to take 3 planes, but you can't get off the plane. It's one plane, but it stopped at 2 different airports, so I was at 4 airports today. So I'm going to kind of ramble like a psychopath, and then Jeff is going to stop me, and you'll ask me questions, and I'll incoherently answer them. So anyway, I guess to fill you in on what I do, I make electronic music, and for a while I performed it mostly in like the noise scene or the quote-unquote underground scene that would happen in like house shows and basements. And the whole way to make it work was the limitation that the technology that I had available to me, which was the PA systems or playing out of a bass amp, no lights, and trying to make as much of a show out of the limits as possible. So from there I started thinking about the audience a lot and how the audience was the one thing that I knew would be constant night to night. Hopefully there would be people there, and if there were people there, what could I do with an audience, and how can I make an audience a part of the show? And I think that's what led to my line of thought about how music is about to drastically change. And it's always been changing, but it's also, there's 2 aspects of music. There's the document, which has existed for about, a little over a century, and it hasn't changed much. It's largely just been this like reproduced same thing again and again and again from LPs, but we'll talk more about that later. But performance has been constantly evolving. Even though it's an industry, it's been constantly changing, constantly evolving. But right now, I think the change is going to be largely based around technology within the audience. But unfortunately, there's this prohibition against technology at a show. When someone takes out a phone at a show, it's like, Jesus Christ, put your phone away. What are you doing? Oh my God. How could you be watching Bruce Springsteen and tweeting about it? What's wrong with you? This is the boss. But and sure, granted, if you're like 5 rows deep and you're like, you could actually yell like, "Hey, Bruce," and he'd be like, "What?" It's kind of odd that you'd be on your phone being like, "Check it out, that's the boss up there. Do you see it?" But I think that's all about to change. So I'd just like to talk about how I think live performance has evolved and why I think it's going to change, and why I think it'll be good and not disgusting. Because if it doesn't change, it will stay disgusting. Anyway, so think about like, I don't know, late 1800s or mid 1800s. People will, you'd go to see an opera and there'd still be people selling beer and buying turkey legs, like walking through the aisle. And you'd be like, "Beer here, thank you. Turkey leg, thank you." And it wasn't until like, the European classical scene started getting more and more like, I don't know, less into the church and the theater and, going to the symphony and going to an opera became that sort of like sanctuary of like properness, and performance changed, and performance became a place of like everything fell in line, and there were rules and there were regulations, and it wasn't like yelling up and shouting or throwing apples or any shit like that. It was very much like this religious sanctuary type experience, and that existed for a while, and then recorded music came about, and recorded music made pop music or folk music explode. But it still had that sort of like same sort of vibe. So you'd go see like an early rock and roll band, you'd still be sitting in your chair, and when they were done, you would clap. And then it got to the point where people would stand at the shows. And the generation prior would be like, "Can you believe these jerks standing up during the show? I can't believe it. This is absurd." And then it got to the point where people weren't just standing, but they were screaming at the top of their lungs throughout the entire performance. And the younger generation that entered the shows that way, that was completely normal. But for the generation prior who didn't go to shows that way, it was like, "God, can't these guys just stand up and shut up? I'm watching the show. We scream when the songs are done." Screaming evolved into throwing your body around as hard as you possibly can in a mosh pit. And people who went to shows before mosh pits existed were like, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you beating me up? I'm just trying to watch the Ramones. This isn't what you do at a concert." And then that turned into jumping off the stage into a crowd of people. And then now it's phones. And I know that's a jump, but phones are the thing that drive the generation prior insane. If you were in your late 20s or 30s and you go to a show and someone's using their phone, I know you're pissed off at them. I know you are. But 13-year-olds that are going to shows and they have their phones and they're used to taking pictures of everything or documenting every experience that they have, it's not weird, and it is how it's supposed to be, but they're not allowed to do it. And there's this prohibition against it. You get shamed, you can get called out by the band, and the reason I think that is because it's a singular use device. A phone is something that's made so you can go like this and enter into this other world. There's no connection to you and the actual performance, or more importantly, the rest of the audience. Because audience members think about themselves differently than a performer does. Like right now, I'm thinking of the audience as one collective. You're one group of people, where in the majority of your minds, you are one person in a group. There's this exchange between individual and collective thought. Does that make sense? Am I making any sense, Jeff? If I stop making sense, just let me know, and we can answer questions that probably don't make sense either. Anyway, so because of that, I think that's why there's this shift in the way phones are making people address what an audience is or what an audience member is, not consciously, but the reason why it doesn't work is because there's no technologies currently, I think anyway, that are making people more engaged at a show. And I think a lot of people are trying to do it by unlocking content and shit like that, but it's not doing it because it's not made from a performance standpoint. Unless it's going to truly enhance the performance or radically change what the nature of performance is, the way that subwoofers did, or amplified music, or electric guitar or whatever, there's not going to be that paradigm shift. But that doesn't mean that the technology is not going to become more and more aversive within the performance environment. Like right now, there's certain recital halls that have a tweet area, because, and I know that sounds crazy if you're watching Marriage of Figaro, to be like, someone's live tweeting Marriage of Figaro, we got to check it out. But they should, because people live tweet sporting games and other cultural events because it's not frowned upon to use your phone. And because of that, they want to be included. But how do you do it? I don't know. If I knew, I guess I'd be rich or something. But I really think that, the aspect of technology in shows is going to be that paradigm shift. And it's not only going to change the way that people attend concerts, but the way that concerts exist. Because if you can take this device that's currently exclusively used like this and use it like this in a large, synchronized fashion, you're creating a very different experience. You're creating a spatial environment spread throughout a room that the people are both the content provider and the content creator. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense? Cool. I think we can answer some questions now because I think I've rambled on as long as I can.
Are you really tired of talking already? That was quick.
Yeah, I didn't breathe at all when I was doing it, so I kind of went through it rather fast.
So when you were holding up your phone, I was thinking of this Taylor Swift concert that I went to for work. And there was a moment where this whole arena of 25,000 people was asked to do stuff with their phone. And it created this interactive moment, and Taylor Swift clearly doesn't mind when. And then I was also thinking about the New World Symphony, and they've built a new venue in Miami, an outdoor venue, where digital projection is part of the experience of the concert, and there's art going on those digital projections. I mean, these seem pretty rudimentary, but is that the kind of thing that you're talking about to create an integration between the technology and the music?
No, because I want there to be something, and maybe this is just me being a greedy performer and wanting new things to exist. But in my mind, if every other aspect of society, technologically speaking, is being customized to the user, why isn't the concert experience? Why isn't a movie? Why isn't a film? And I'm not saying some choose your own adventure stuff that people have been talking about since the 80s or whatever. But if I'm at a concert and there's, for every 3 out of 5 people in the room, there's a $500 supercomputer that's both a speaker and a microphone and a light and a camera, why aren't those being utilized? Why aren't there these new pieces of art that are emerging that aren't music, that aren't film, that aren't theater, that are this new era of things? Like the same way that a record didn't exist until someone was like, we can scratch into this wax and it's going to sound like crap, but it sounds a little bit like what I just said. Can you understand what I'm saying? There was that shift where all of a sudden, exactly, there it is. There was this moment where it was like, oh, because of this, we can do this, this, and this. And I think, what someone was saying before about how programmers aren't creative, I mean, that's insane. All programmers do is create. They take a blank page and they create, crazy combinations of characters that turn into, non-physical objects that change people's lives. But I think the majority of what people are doing with, smartphones or tablets or whatever, or even the internet, is trying to recreate old technologies in a new way or try to deliver a new ad or a new means of getting to somewhere rather than something that just doesn't exist. And I think we're right on the cusp of this, like, a record that doesn't exist unless you get 10 friends together to listen to it. A show that has no performers. A show that is just 10,000 people going to an arena to watch that. Do you know what I mean? To not be like, I'm going to go see Taylor Swift. It'd be like, I'm going to go see the weird thing Taylor Swift made. She's not going to be there. It's going to be great. Does that make any sense? I'm going to ask that every time I have nothing left to say.
I'm not sure entirely makes sense, but...
Well, no, think about it. If there was
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm saying I'm not sure the whole idea makes that much sense. But maybe
Well, if it made sense, then we wouldn't be talking about it.
Maybe I'm retrograde.
Dan, you've developed an app to kind of start addressing what that interaction looks like. Can you just talk about the process you went through?
Sure. I mean, I don't think I was thinking about any of this. I was mainly thinking like, God, it's so expensive to rent lights. I don't want to rent any lights. How can I trick people into bringing lights to my concert for me? And I was like, oh, they already are. And as soon as I saw it, as soon as we did the first show that had everyone's phone like flashing in lights and sync to the music, I just started thinking like, why am I up here? Why are people bringing these giant rigs everywhere they go? Why is a band on tour with 10 semi-trucks full of lights and sound equipment? Why is there nothing that's just embracing the idea of these collective experiences that you can't have otherwise? You need both. You need the audience to make it happen. And it's also the audience that you're watching. It's this feedback loop. Obviously, I think there's an importance like cult of personality, and there's an artistic element. It can't just be like everyone's moving their phones and it's doing something crazy, or else you're just at like the creepiest rave in the world. So there definitely needs, and that's why I'm thinking about it as a new art rather than just like an experience. But I think it's going to be an art that's not, I don't know, and maybe it's because of my composition background where I think about shows where the composer isn't there. No one's like, I'm going to see Mozart, dude, I hope I meet him after the show, it's going to be awesome. But you go for that experience. And I feel like if there were these pieces that were made for collective experience that wouldn't have been able to exist in, you know, the early 2000s or the 90s or prior, because the technology wasn't there. There weren't these things in almost everyone's pocket that made it able to take 100,000 photographs at the same time and then roam around it. There wasn't something that would make it so if you wanted to listen to an orchestra where every different instrument was, you know, on a phone, or depending on how you moved around, it would shift around the space. These lighting environments, anything. You know, pieces of theater where lines would be delivered as people are doing them. Going to an event knowing that you're not only going to be the event, but you're going to watch it and enjoy it. And I think there's a fine line between entertainment and chore. So as soon as you start introducing concepts of like choice or interaction, it changes the way that people think about what they're doing. Once you have to be like, oh, what if we chose this, or what if we did that, or what if it wasn't me, or what if I did it? I think it changes the way an audience member thinks about something, which I both like and dislike. You need to make sure that you're not introducing too many options, or else it's no longer entertainment, and it's just a series of tasks. I know you didn't ask that, but... the app's called Wham City Lights, and we originally made it for my tour in 2012, and it uses like a ultrasonic sound in like the 16 to 22 hertz range that sends out a series of like modulating sine waves that tell the phones like unlock light show 175 or whatever, and then it would play in sync with the music, this synchronized light show, so everyone's phone would be strobing at the same time. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I was worried about that a lot because I didn't get a cell phone until 2008, and I didn't get a smartphone until, I don't know. So I kept thinking like, I used to be the guy who didn't have a phone and thought everyone with a phone was a dickhead. Now I'm making an app. What am I doing? So I wanted to make sure that it was something that was enjoyable if you didn't have it as well. Because like, you know, it's not like you go to a show and they hand out glow sticks and it's like, I didn't get a glow stick, I'm out of here. Or maybe it's the kind of shows like they're handing out glow sticks, I'm out of here. So I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed it even though you didn't have a phone. Because the light shines on us all, man, right? Who's next? Thank you, good night. No, I don't know. Do you have anything, Jeff?
I mean, I'm worried about your voice a little bit, honestly.
What'd you say?
I'm worried about your voice because you've got to perform. Right?
Yeah, I am a little. I lost my voice. I did this workshop at Sundance, and I was doing pretty much this exact same thing. But no one there, when I brought up apps, they're like, yeah, I've got like the weather app. And I was like, yeah, what are other apps that excite you? And they're like, I'm really into the Yahoo weather app as well. Like both those weather apps are awesome. So it was a little intimidating to come up here and be like, I'm not a coder. I'm my co-founder Keith is the coder, and I met him. We were doing I'm part of this collective called Wham City, and we're doing this comedy tour, which was comedic in itself since no one was going. And I knew he was a former programmer at Google, and he was doing developer tools and stuff. And I was like, oh, Keith, I know you're like going to art school now, and you're out of the coding game, but I've got this idea for an app. It would turn all the phones the same color at the same time. It would look awesome. Let's do it. And he's like, yeah, dude, I can make that in like a weekend. And then like 7 months later, we had made it. And I think like a lot of people who get involved in startup culture, you don't realize it. You're making something because it's fun. We were coming at it from an art project. It was just, we'll make this thing for this tour, and it'll be cool, and then other people will start doing it, and it'll be awesome. It'll be great. And then we just started getting emails like crazy from like Brad Paisley and the Dallas Cowboys and Billboard Music Awards, and they're like, who built your app? Can we license it? What company made it? We're like, company, yes, a company made it. Funny you should ask, because we're the company. So we rapidly became a company, and we didn't know anything about business or anything about really anything at all. But we were dealing with these like enterprise companies, and these also churches love it. Churches go crazy. Like Christmas time, I don't know what it is, but it gets psyched. And I'm supposed to be saying faith-based groups instead of churches now because we're trying to get our marketing right. Faith-based groups go nuts over it. They love it. But we didn't, and then we started like getting whatever, someone would be like, oh, this is the perfect fan engagement. And we'd be like Googling fan engagement. We're like, oh, yes, this is fan engagement. We do that. And then someone was like, do you have VC? And I didn't have any. I thought VC was like a villain from RoboCop or something. And so anyway, it was a really crazy experience. And I started thinking about how similar, obviously different scale, but similar the DIY scene of music is to the DIY scene of tech startups. And I was reading this book called like Founders, and it was these founders' origin stories, and about them like building stuff in their garages and basements and driving to these like tech shows that no one would be at. And I was like, that was me. I was doing that, but it was with shitty music. There's thousands of nerds that if they just, stuck a microphone into a speaker would be making noise music instead of like, marketing apps for advertising companies. And it's just does anyone know the book that I'm talking about? I can't remember. It was called like Founders Stories or the Origins of Founders. It was kind of like an art band could be your life, but for tech startups. And I don't know, I found it really inspiring, and I started thinking about how tech is the new art form. If you were to look back 100 years ago, what art exists now that didn't exist before? And obviously it's the art that's based around technology. And that's why I think you've got this old system of the music industry. These music as a recorded document has always been the same thing. You hit play and it goes, and then it's done, and it's the exact same thing every time you do it until you get sick of it, and then it dies to you. And I think that's going to change. And I don't think it won't be music. It will be something different. It will be a different, pleasurable audio experience, but it's not going to be listening to the Beatles. There's never going to be this like Beatles 3D or whatever the hell you want. I mean, I'm sure someone will make it and it's going to just be ridiculous shit. But there has to be coming this new wave of art that's based around how, there's this John Cage saying where like, there's no bad seat in the house because what I'm hearing sounds radically different from you because we're in different spots in the room and we have different mindsets, and the way we're interpreting sound is completely different. And I think that's about to become actually true, where you could be at a concert, and since the sound is coming from literally, if you're at a show with 1,000 people, you're at 1,000-point stereo. You're not too far to the left, you're not too far to the right, you're not too far to the center, you're just in the right spot to be in, because that's the way the new art was designed to be.
I think the book, for anyone who's interested, is Founders at Work.
Yes, that's it.
Stories of Startups' Early Days. It's written by Jessica Livingston, who is an awesome venture capitalist, one of the founding partners at Y Combinator. And some of the folks who are in it, Steve Wozniak from Apple, Katerina Fake, who founded Flickr, Max Levchin from PayPal.
And there were all these, like, there's like a chapter on Hotmail. And I'd kind of forgotten about Hotmail, except as like a joke. Sometimes when I'd sign up a mailing list as a joke, I'd put at hotmail.com. And the chapter was like, yeah, we were saying that we were going to make web-based email, and they said it couldn't be done. And I was like, said it couldn't be done? Like, you know, taking for granted that I was like using Hotmail in high school and stuff, being like, of course Hotmail exists, it has to exist. And I think a lot of people take technologies for granted because they don't understand, like, oh yeah, we basically forged this from the ether. This didn't exist, and then we pulled it out of the nothing and then stuck it into this box, and now you use it all the time and you get angry when it doesn't work. And that's what I liked about that book. It was talking about a lot of technologies and a lot of products that didn't exist anymore, but if they didn't exist, it was almost as if they were like really popular regional hardcore bands that never like got out of their area, but if it wasn't for them, like Nirvana wouldn't have seen them and like ripped off a riff and then like changed all of music. Definitely. Well, I think the audience will be the performer. I think people will be like, hey, I made this app. We're going to have a party where we use it. I know that sounds like the lamest party in the world right now. Come over and beta test my app. It's going to be a sick party. There'll be no snacks and no one's playing music except for you. But I do think that's what it would be. I think the same way that people get together and listen to music or watch a movie, you'd be like, oh, I downloaded the new Wayne Cohen Flaming Lips app. I don't know what it is, but you need 25 people to use it or it doesn't work. Will you please come over? Like, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be these experiences of like, hey, I got the new Kanye West app. You need 100 people. So 100 people are meeting at this bar at this time. Do you want to go? Yes, let's go. And that's going to be, I think, the direction it's going to go in. I don't think it's going to replace any art form. I think it's going to be something that runs in parallel with it. And it'll take a while. I think for the first couple of years, it will be like, yeah, we did this thing, and it was like cool. And then at the end, it like gave me a coupon for Colgate. But eventually, it will get over that. And it will be people inventing things for them and their group of friends, and it'll start in this microwave and balloon and eventually get supported by large things that will want to give you Colgate coupons. But so I guess to answer your question, the audience will be the only thing that changes it because the audience will be the only thing that really benefits from it. The large music industry isn't really going to benefit from an experimental spatial environment created with smartphones until there's enough of a fan base that's obsessed with them that there has to become emerging stars from that. Does that make sense? Become part of what? Oh yeah, I mean, think about installation art or like sound art. You go into an environment and you just sort of like chill there and listen to it. I think there will be these experiences where, you know, I would love to have, you know, I don't know, think about like someone like Terry Riley who would put on these like 24-hour performances. I'm sure there were like multiple times where Terry was like, all right, you guys keep riffing, I'm gonna use the bathroom for about 25 minutes, it's gonna be sick. And then I'm sure he wasn't just like running back to the stage. I'm sure he was immersed in this environment that he was both a performer in and now at this point engaging in as an audience member or, you know, an active participant. And I think if you start thinking about how you can create environments for active participants, and you're gonna have two groups of people, or we'll have three groups of people. You'll have people who don't have the phone, people who don't have the device to participate, and they're gonna be strictly observers. And then you'll have two groups of people that have phones, the participants and the non-participants. So if you can create an environment with phones where people are observing people. They have no idea what they're doing. It's just you're there watching an experience that's unfolding before the very eyes of the people you're watching do it. I think that can be a cool experience, and I think that's going to be the thing that'll start other people being like, oh, that was cool, I can do that. Why don't we try it? Why don't we get together 15 people and see how it'll sound if we're all playing different parts of the kit, or we're all playing, your phone will represent this and my phone will represent that, and they'll be in sync, and we'll move it out. Or if we move them, they'll go out of sync. And if we do this, they'll go back in sync. And I can do this to take over your phone, and you can do that to take over all the phones. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Yes? Sure. Unless you were just moving your arm or something. Definitely. I don't know. I thought about that a lot because it was a very rapid jump from no one having a smartphone. Or let me take it was a very rapid jump from maybe like 4 or 5 people out of 500 having cameras to 300 to 400 people having cameras. Do you know what I mean? And I think because of that, that's why it was this sort of like, jump in the evolution of what happens in a crowd environment. It went from just like there being to no technology to just this immersion of technology. And I don't know, the current app that I use, it is that it does like take the phone away from being something that you look at and makes it so that it's something that you look at in a group context. Because it's not, if you were at a show and someone's like, all right, now take out your phone and look at the screen and it's going to turn yellow. You'd be like, great, thanks. Now my phone's yellow. But if you see 1,000 phones turn yellow at the same time, it has a very different experience. But I don't know if you should remove the documentation because it's just ingrained in a lot of people's lives now that you document what you do and then you share it to people who aren't there. So, and I think that, the point of trying to stop that or thwart that is the same as asking someone to sit down or the same as asking someone to stop screaming during the Beatles at Shea Stadium. It's not going to happen. But the embrace of it or the forbidden nature of it is going to be what sculpts what happens. And right now, there's nothing. It's this unspoken dick move to take out your phone, but people do it. And I think that's what, if we find a way to both change the way that performances exist and to re-socialize how you use your device, either through the natural progression of people just getting used to doing it, because I don't know what it's like to be 14 years old in 2014. It's got to be crazy as hell. But it's also very bizarre to be 32 in 2014 and look back and be like, wow, when I was 14, I was going to, I guess, rooms exactly like this. And I can't imagine like letting all of my friends know that I was here and that they could come and meet me. I'd have to like find a payphone and then like call their house and be like, Mrs. Ruggieri, is Tim there? Yes, I know it's late. Okay, well, tell him I'm at the Shriners Hall and 6 ska bands are playing and it's awesome. Okay, goodbye. And I think if we were to remove that element of someone being able to be like, dude, 6 ska bands are playing at the Shriners Hall, check it out, the ska scene would die. And I don't know if we want that to happen in 2015. No, but it's important now. You need to have things like, think about when Dave Chappelle just showed up in Portland and was like, I'm going to do this stand-up thing in this public square. I'm just going to announce it on Twitter, see what happens. And it got so gigantic that he couldn't perform. Like tens of thousands of people just rolled up within a matter of hours. And that's amazing. And I think a lot of people depend on finding out what's going on with their phones. A lot of people go to devices, who go to shows, use their devices. So you don't want to remove it. You don't want to find a way to just distract it. I think you just want to find a way that's going to make it work and have it not be a distraction, but have it be an advantage. Does that answer your question? Well, I think when you go to a performance, you want to. Well, when I go to a performance, I should say, I like being immersed in it. I like forgetting that, like, right outside, there's like a Chipotle that's like got like rotting lettuce in a dumpster, or I'm at a movie. I don't want to remember that I'm gonna like just leave and go out into the street. I like watching Blade Runner and being in Blade Runner. I don't want to watch Blade Runner and think like, I really gotta do my laundry. You know what I mean? Like, and the more something pulls me out of that environment, the less the environment is. The same way that you don't want someone just going up to you during a movie being like, cool movie, right? What'd you think of the last part? I thought it was great. Do you agree? I don't know how that's not going to happen or change, but I do think I'm not saying that it should be represented in the physical world, but I think it shouldn't be a distraction. And again, this might change. In 20 years from now, it might not be a distraction. It might be a generational thing. It might be a micro-generational thing. It might be different for people who are 12 years old now compared to people who are 14 years old now. You know what I mean? I have no idea. I guess we'll find out in 2 years. But I do think it's important that they merge, because I think right now there's so much that happens in the digital world that doesn't get represented in the physical world, and vice versa. And obviously, so much of the content that people care about in the digital realm is a documentation of the physical realm. Do you know what I mean? If you can merge those two together in a way that, like, not only do they become part of the performance, but a performance themselves, and you can create this scarcity. You can create an app that can only be used in a particular fashion. Like, I think that was what I'm really into, this like growing trend of this, like, what was the app with the bird, Flappy Bird, is that what it was called? When the guy took that offline, I was like, yes, yes, the limited edition app that's driving everyone insane. The thing where everyone's like, why, what is this guy crazy? He's taking his dumb bird game down. He's making like $50 million a day. And I was like, yes, this guy is awesome. If Facebook was like, if you're not signed up, it's done. No one else is getting in till midnight tomorrow, that is, I think it would be amazing. There's no limited edition website. There's no limited edition app. And they do it in the beginning where it's like, yeah, we sent you an invite, but your buddy's got to, like, you know, verify you and stuff. But then that just goes away. And I'm not saying it should be exclusive, but there's no scarcity to the digital realm. And I think that's what's changing. And I think that's why people are embracing things like Snapchat. And like, they're like, you look at this little bar, and it's like, I know this is just going to be my dickhead roommate brushing his teeth because I can hear him in there doing it right now, but I'm going to look at it anyway. This sucks. And then you do. And I think that's sort of like, you know, before they made the wheel, I'm sure they were making all these like worse versions of round things. And they're like, oh, it's getting us there. Who cares? Shut up. And then someone made the wheel. And I think we're close mentally of thinking like, oh, what is the problem with this X, Y, and Z? And I think about performance a lot, and I think the problem with performance is that I'm bored of going to see bands, and I'm bored of listening to music that sounds the exact same way every time. I remember being a little kid and watching, you know, like the Ewok movie, and every time I watched it, I wanted it to be different. I was like, but why come they're leaving that guy? What does he do? Maybe if I watch it this time, they'll stay with this guy. And obviously that doesn't happen with VHS tapes. But I think people, I don't know. Now I'm just rambling on about choose your own adventure, which I hate. I hate the concept of choose your own adventure, because then it's not art. It's just sort of like, yeah, that was cool. I don't want to go in that room anymore. Let's go back in this room. Yeah, this room is cool. All right, yeah. Can we go? Like, I think teleportation would be the thing that like ruins society. It would just be like a giant, endless hotel of couches, and then people are like, you want to go to Mount Rushmore? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Mount Rushmore sucks. Let's go. Let's go to Hawaii. You want to go to Hawaii? Yeah, I just was at Hawaii. So anyway. If you remove the scarcity from the physical world, it sucks. And right now there's no scarcity in the digital world, and that's why I think the majority of it sucks. So if you can like create that and merge those, you'll either make one of them suck or one of them roll.
So we have time for one more, and then we have to let Dan set up. So choose wisely.
The guy with two hands. It's a great question. I like to start the day, each day, by waking up with crippling anxiety. And I like to really focus on that time and think about all the things that are causing the anxiety, whether they're real or not. and really internalize them and make sure that I'm thinking about them as hard as I can. And then I'll go throughout the day kind of hinting at an idea that I want to tell somebody, but I'm embarrassed to say it, so I'll kind of like let them just be like, why are you talking to me, strange man? Tell me what's up. No, I don't know. I think it comes a lot from, if you're a touring musician, like today for 8 hours, I was on an airplane where I couldn't really do anything. I exhausted all of my social media. I spent the $8 to get the Wi-Fi. And, there's this depressing moment when you're scrolling through this endless, infinite scroll and you're like, oh no, I've seen these birthday photos before. I'm definitely sorting by most recent and top news, and I'm seeing the birthday photos again. So Facebook's out. I'll go to Instagram. Oh God, that's my neighbor's dog again. So there's a lot of time where you can't just suck yourself out of your life and put it into a phone, where you can't turn your brain off and you have to look out the window and you just have to think. And I think that's when I'm the most creative, is when I'm forced to think. And that can be, a nightmare for someone with anxiety or like delusions of grandeur or narcissism or both or all three that I'm experiencing right now. But that's when I think I'm the most free, is when I'm in a moving vehicle and I'm looking out the window and I'm watching the world slowly move past me, or I'm slowly moving through it, depending on what you think. And that's when I think a lot of these ideas come, and I'll think about the night before and I'll be like, oh, that was awesome. I wish, when we did the thing in the back of the room, I wish there were lights there. I wish there was a speaker there. I wonder how we would do it. Logistically, what would that mean? We'd have to run these cables and set these lights, and the sound guys already hate me. So I don't know how we're going to do that, and blah, blah, blah. So I think that's the process. I think boredom is one of the most important things that could ever happen to a creative person, because it's going to drive you insane, and you can't come up with anything innovative unless you're, kind of insane, or else why would you do it? You do something practical and be successful at that. Why would you take the risk of ruining your life or becoming a failure? Well, I guess not with the app, but the app was the end of the app was the success after a long series of prior failures. For a couple of years, I was working with this guy at Casper Electronics. I'm an awesome circuit bender, synthesizer builder. And we were trying to develop these radio-controlled LEDs that were in ping pong balls. And we were like, how can we make them so we don't have to collect them back and people can save them? And spent thousands of hours, and we were so close to doing it. And then Arcade Fire at Coachella did the exact same thing with giant beach balls. And we were like, well, let's just go jump off this cliff because life sucks. No one's going to be like, oh, cool, did you hear about the thing Arcade Fire did? This totally unknown dickhead did the thing with tiny ping pong balls. Yeah, they had these giant, cool, squishy balls that they threw around the audience. This dipshit's got ping pong balls. Let alone whenever we would, be talking to a manufacturer, they'd be like, well, how are you going to get the battery inside the ping pong ball? You're going to, these are going to, they're going to expire, dude. What are you going to do? We're like, don't worry about it. We're going to get them out. They're going to be fresh, hot off the press. They'll be, still soft. Anyway. So there was that. There was a lot of, I did a lot of, pieces where I would give the audience, I did a TED Talk where I didn't talk at all, and I just handed out instructions to the audience, and the audience performed them. And that's when I started thinking about the audience as the performer. And that's also where I started thinking about the importance of phones, because I was like, what's the audience going to bring that can make sound? And I was like, ooh, they'll take out and jingle their keys. And I was like, and that will sound totally stupid. So we didn't have people jingle their keys. And then, so I just had people set all their phone alarms at the same time. And luckily, phones don't go off at the same time because there's no standard time. It's just AT&T's yeah, it's 4 o'clock, shut up. But that was the first time I was ever in a spatial environment where there were 500 points of sound. And I was like, whoa, that sounds awesome. So I don't know if that piece was a success. It's not like anyone's like, dude, you got to perform that piece where you made me call my dad on speakerphone. But from that, I think it led to this idea that, and I also think this idea might not be, I don't think it's the end. I don't think the end of this journey is going to be just turning all the phones green and red at the same time. Well, I think it's cool. I do think the end is going to be this embrace of technology, mobile technology, single-use technology in a group setting where there's going to be pieces of art that are made exclusively for it, where it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I downloaded the MP3 and it's on my phone. It's going to be like, my phone is this thing and we can only do it when we do this. The same way that you can only listen to a CD with a CD player. You can only go to a concert if the band exists. You can only listen to this piece of music, whatever you want to call it, with the phone and with a group. And I think that's going to be the thing that makes me broke and poor and unpopular as a musician.
On that optimistic note, let's thank Dan for his time.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you again all for being here today. We are officially a success. Someone's trying to sell their Hackfort pass for $500 on Craigslist, so we're special. We actually, if you want to hang out with Dan or Jeff or anybody, you can go downstairs to the restaurant and pay for a beer and hang out. We just have to clear this room. And if you want to come back and see Dan perform and you don't have a Treefort wristband, not the Hackfort wristband, but Treefort, you can buy one. Where's the box office, Gilbert? At the water cooler building, like 2 blocks away. So if you want to come see the shows tonight or any night this week, go buy your pass.